Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Hope you've had a great week. I hope that it's warming up for you and, getting that nice false spring coming in that we all know and love and then curse later. You got that going on up in your neck of the woods there, Dan?
Absolutely. I got up into the 50s yesterday, and
Mm.
all the snow on the road is gone. The majority of the snow is still on lawns and stuff like that, but it's already 36 now,
Yeah, but it
which is
just looks like a
crazy.
massive snot salt monster just like sneezed all over your car.
I parked mine in the garage, so I don't know, but yeah, I could
Oh,
imagine.
okay.
I can
I need to
imagine.
roll for initiative to see if I can get my car clean or not. That's that's where I'm at right now. I feel like I'm going to lose.
And looking at it too in car care, and that's of course something that's different in different parts of the country. I never had to worry about my chassis rotting out, rusting out. And now I look at it, I'm like, okay, so how often do I need to wash my truck? I want to keep it in good shape. I mean, I do. I love my Suburban, and it's just what our family needs and all that. While we made a great deal on it, it's still very valuable to us. Is there a way to stop it? How often do I have to wash my truck? And the answer is pretty regularly, depending on how often you're on the road. Because
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it helps to give it a little bit. I think too, though, it sometimes the way certain vehicles were driven back in the day compared to now, like there's been a lot better technological forward and kind of treating metals and things like that. So going to be as prevalent going down the line, but I feel like they've come up with better ways to coat metals and things like that. So hopefully that keeps it from. But I think if you get any kind of scratch, like that's where you're going to run into issues. So if you're off-roading,
I
that's
wish.
that's that's where you gotta watch it.
She's definitely a pavement princess. I mean, it's been great because I did get to kick it into four-wheel drive at some point on a very steep hill.
Yeah.
Marnie was actually driving, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're not going to make it up that. And she gets about three-fourths the way and slides down a little bit, and starts again and slides down a little bit. I'm like, put it in park and just click that button. Basically, turn the switch from two-wheel drive to four-wheel. I'm not. There we go. We're up and we're
Throw it
running.
in four-wheel drive and
And then
let's
we go.
go.
It was amazing. She's like, "Oh, this is so much better." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. Yeah, we all need four-wheel drive." But anyway, we're not here to talk about Danny's truck problems.
No, no, we're definitely not. We're gonna talk about being a grown-up dad, I think, eventually
Yes,
today,
someday.
because we've got a guest on, be our first guest, I believe, of this
Hmm.
year.
Yep.
So that's going to be exciting. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name because we already had that conversation before we hit play or hit record, and we both agreed that it would not go well. So we'll wait to
It's
hear how Joe pronounces his last
yep.
name. But yeah, this documentary series that he's working on for PBS
Hmm.
is so in our wheelhouse. I feel like
Absolutely.
any number of dads that we know, whether it be part of this organization or just out and about, fit the mold for just what he is trying to put out there and display fatherhood.
Hmm.
And it's so reassuring in a lot of ways because there are a lot of dads who are kind of in this limbo stage of what do I do? And he
Right.
asks some really good questions in the pilot episode, and it's going to be fun to pick his brain on where exactly he's going with it. And I'm curious too, like, he kind of got thrown into sort of the at-home dad life because of COVID, is what he had said. So I'm kind of curious to see what kind of perspective he has on that as well, because
Hmm.
that's always an interesting conversation, someone who
Really.
did not choose this role in life and to
Yeah.
just get literally thrown into it.
And it really changed a lot about our membership. We had a lot of new members coming in, and then we had a lot of work from home dads who were like, "Oh, this is exactly what I need. I need people to talk to about what my kids are doing today, even though I've got work on the side or work after hours or whatever." And it was hilarious because of that sudden splash of water. That sudden bucket of water over your head, like, oh, this is what it's about. This is, oh, okay, parenting, like real parenting. And I just love because a part of what they've talked about in Grown Up Dad in the pilot and then in their website and what have you is are we redefining parenting? And is it just providing? What does that mean to provide now? Do we just still look at, I'm a paycheck? And of course, we don't. And of course, most of our dads and probably most of our listeners don't. But that understanding that there's somebody that, and I hate to say it this way, but somebody that's out in the wild, right? Who is heard the song and is singing it. And we're like, yeah, we've been singing that song for like 10 years now. Good. Come on in. Let's all get
Right.
comfortable in here.
So Corey has always been of the philosophy when we have talked about me being an at-home dad and just at-home dads in general, about the fact that when it comes to providing, that there is a redefining of the definition, but at the same time, also stating the fact that an at-home parent is providing in more ways than a paycheck could ever provide.
Yeah.
And when you look at it that way, it really does change the mindset of, okay, what would it cost to have a lawn care person, a laundry service, a cleaning service, a chauffeur service, a cook, all these things that an at-home parent does. And if both parents were to be working, what does all that look like? And I have many a times where I get really down on myself. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know I'm not alone in that. The conversations on Discord alone tell me that that's not the case. And it's just a nice perspective to step back and look at full picture.
Hmm.
It doesn't make it easier in the moment. Hell no, it doesn't make it easier in the moment. I mean, just this week alone, I was in a real serious dark spot with just, trying to kind of figure out a few different things in life, both work related, from being at the brewery to at home stuff. And that's, juggling being an at home working parent is very like, it's just time consuming and frustrating and everything else too. Because yeah, I think that Joe brings up a great point about how much time you spend with your kids and what does that look like. He mentioned, and I kind of want to talk to him about it a little more, but he mentions that, I guess there's a survey that says that more time with kids is more job satisfaction,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
less times with kids is less job satisfaction. And I don't know that I fully agree with that because I feel like when I spend more time with my kids, I feel less satisfied with my job because I see all the just joy and things with spending time with
Hmm.
my kids.
Yeah.
So it almost makes me not want to be doing
Right.
my job as much. But I can understand where he's coming from, but it is definitely one of those things that I feel like I'm just wrestling with.
Hmm. Well, you truly, I think, steep yourself in the reason that you're doing this. Why am I going to work every day? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because of these children, the people that I'm doing this job for. This is the providing. And you get to spend time with those kids and with your partner. And I think for me, that was really made it worth it. Because you go and it's like, I used to make the joke that, what does a service technician do when it rains? Well, he gets wet, you know, because the
Yep.
reality of it is you're doing these jobs and whatever the job might be, you're going to do it when it's hot and when it's cold and when it's raining and when it's snowing and when anything else is going on. If you can make it to that job, you're going to because your family needs it. And
Yeah,
that I think is where you can look at it and go, okay, I did this and it was worth it. So,
definitely. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break and we will be back to talk about the docuseries from PBS called Grown Up Dad in just a moment. Become a member of the National At Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support. connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. All right, and we are back, and we have our guests with us. So we're going to continue on our conversation about talking about the show Grown Up Dads. We have with us, Joe, and here we go. We're going to try this. My brain is like ADHD and like crazy right now. Joe DeGinis.
Gidjunis.
It's great, yeah. Joe
Gidjunis. I
G.
see. I told
Gidjunis.
Joe
you.
G just works.
Joe
Awesome.
G. I love that. We're going to use that. Joe G.
Actually,
All
funny,
right.
great story about my last name. I was a journalist for 10 years, and I used my name when I had to leave messages and reach sources. And when I changed my name to Joe G, is who was leaving the message, I got so much more access to the person that I was trying to reach. It's crazy. So
That's
Joe
awesome.
G works.
I like it, Joe G. And then we've got Josh Kagi as well with us. And you guys have been so much fun to talk to just in like the green room portion of our show. Before we even hit record, it was like we started having conversations like, oh yeah, we should probably actually officially start this whole thing. Our show is normally our listeners are normally used to that as well because we're always coming back on and be like, oh yeah, we were having this great conversation. We
By the
decided to
way,
finally make it real.
you missed it, Neener.
Exactly. But thank you guys so much for your time to come on the show. And like I said, we're very excited to talk about grown up dads. Just to kind of get a little bit of information to help the listeners out, tell us a little bit just about you and your family, like how many kids, where you're located at, that kind of thing.
First, guys, thank you so much for having us. Really love the network, love the groups that you've been forming all over the country and the conferences. We're excited to attend the next one too. So I can't wait to meet you guys in person. It's been really fun already so far. So I'm based in Philadelphia. I have one kid. His name's Gabe. He's 8.5. And I never got the message that you would want to be a father growing up. I never got the message that you weren't more than a drive-by parent. And, honestly, when I had him, I was like, oh, I don't want to be like that. But I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea. I really just didn't have that role model. And so the idea of how do you become a different kind of dad when you don't have that person in your life or in your orbit, I was like, I want to figure this out. And so I decided to start talking to people, and we're like, hey, you should really make this a show. You should make this into something. And so I'm here in Philadelphia, and we travel across the country talking to different experts and real dads about the issues and challenges that are facing us for this generation. And it's the first docuseries, the first show really about parenting from the father's perspective. And I love everyone telling me how much support they have given to this and how much they back it, because I love doing it. And I think every time we have this conversation, we're making the next generation better.
Yeah,
Here,
I love
here.
that too. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, so I'm just outside Philadelphia as well. I have two kids, a 7-year-old son, Asher, and I gotta remember the half because it's very important to her, the 4.5-year-old daughter, Ellie. Joe and I have been mutual acquaintances. I mean, I guess that's what an acquaintance is mutual. We've been acquaintances for a while, but didn't really know each other. And about 3 years ago, he put a post up on Facebook on a couple of different groups. One of them was the Bandit Dad group on Facebook,
Yeah.
to
Awesome.
say like, "Hey, I'm seeking a producer or some help to kind of put together this project." And I had a media communications background and journalism background, and I kind of shot him a quick note and was like, "Hey, we're nearby. We kind of know each other. We know a
Yeah.
lot of the same people. Let's have a chat." And like 2 or 3 weeks later, we were on a plane to Australia. So that's
Yeah.
really that 16-hour flight was really kind of our get to know you as we were
Yeah. Did
diving
we
into this
actually, I
head
don't think we
first.
met each other before. I'm like, can you join me on a international flight to Australia? I was like,
That's
pretty
plenty
sure
of
Wow.
I
time to get
was
to know
like, what's
somebody.
going
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. We caught
on?
up real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to learn much about any more about someone anywhere else than in such a stressful situation. You really know
Mhm.
who the core of this person is. Like if can they handle the line? Can they handle the kid crying? Can they handle these things that are normal part of, or do they lose their mind?
Yep.
And you know, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned that, one of the reasons that you kind of got the idea for this documentary series was due to just the whole idea of not really having anybody, kind of tell you about being a dad or the positivity. And I really like connected with that in a lot of ways just because you were like talking to one of the dads about, when you became a dad, like what did dads come up and talk to you about or what did they say? And like I was right along like, oh, like, oh, enjoy it while it lasts, like they're, only a little
Oh,
for
yeah.
this long, and don't sweat the small things, and like all these, just all these things that they're not really anything more than just sentiments. It's not actual advice. And I always tend to like look at that. And when dads come to me, I run a local dads group here in Cincinnati,
Love
and
that.
we get together all the time. And I always tell, especially young dads are like, oh, you know, I don't really know what to do with my kid. Like, well, we're going to go to the park. Yeah, but my kid really can't run around in the park. Great. Strap them in a stroller, strap them to your body, and just come and hang out and talk and, have that time with other dads.
Great.
And they're like, oh, I never really thought about it that way. I'm like, yeah, dude, like, for the longest amount of time, like that kid is literally just like an appendage you can snap on and go with because
Hmm.
Hmm.
they can't say no. And why should you be like trapped in your home? Like I remember one dad talking about on our Discord server one time about, I don't know what to do with my kid because like they're just laying around, and so like here I am watching playing video games, doing all this different stuff or whatever, and I feel awful for it. And it's like, get outside. There's nothing keeping you from taking that kid with you and going and doing the things that you do all the time. And that was like just those kind of getting away from sort of the horrific side of things and just
Yeah.
really diving into this is what's enjoyable. This is the joy that I get
Mhm.
from these things, and sharing that. I love that that is one of the big things that I keep seeing come out when watching the pilot.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad you do that. Yeah, I love that you actually give practical advice. When we had that interview and he said those things, I was just like, oh, thank you. Because again, it's like, yeah, the advice you get, I feel like it's like sometimes the advice you get from early on or right before you're about to have a kid, the advice is the similar advice you get like after, like at a funeral sometimes. It's kind of like, oh, they just have no idea what to tell you.
Yes.
And it's just, pretty awkward, honestly. And
Hmm.
it's like it really shouldn't be. Like this is a wonderful thing that's about to happen, and you get to bond with this amazing person, and you get to, experience life through this new perspective, and you get to grow and you get to teach, and it's just and filled with love, right? And so I'm so glad you give that advice, and I wish people said more too about actually the first year or so, try to travel, even get in the car. And because they're not going anywhere, I mean,
Right.
obviously when they start crawling, you don't want to get on a plane because then it's awful. Honestly,
Right.
there's that gap where it's like, don't get on a plane for a couple of years. But like the first, year and a half, like they can't move, like get in the car and go somewhere, do fun stuff because they're an appendage. And I love that
Hmm.
metaphor. That kind of advice, no one around me, no one had it or really offered it. I felt it was very, just so general that I was going into and I had no idea. And Honestly, what really influenced the show was during the pandemic when we're all stuck, we're all not moving anywhere, we're all reevaluating what's really most important in life. And I felt wholly unprepared to really be a good dad at that moment. And I was just determined, like, I'm not going to repeat history for what I grew up with. And this is how I decided to embrace that and be like, all right, I don't want to feel like this. How do I change that?
Excellent. Yeah. And you had a 3-year-old, if I did the math right,
You're right. Well
during
done.
COVID. Oof. Three-nager.
Math
Okay.
is mathing over there. I like
That's
that,
a
man. That's good.
that's a challenge right there. 3-year-olds, and they're supposed to be, and they're at that
Yeah.
point where they're trying to push you away, and the terrible twos roll into the three-nager.
Yeah.
And I love to hear that because, I mean, my kids were a little bit older at that time. I think my youngest was maybe 6,
Mm.
and it was still. I mean, they were all in school, of course, so there was that had its own challenges, but just going from having some free time to suddenly having that child with you constantly as a 3-year-old. And they're very in their way demanding. Like you said, they're beyond crawling. They're no longer just an appendage. I love that. I love that illustration. But they're at a point where they need you a lot more. And going from working outside the home to working inside the home and having that sudden, I mean, it's like, okay, I don't mean to make this bad, but they're like a leech. Everything you do, you have to have them with you. Everything you say, they hear, and it's just an amazing thing. So I'm not happy for you that you had to do that, but I am happy that you did it and probably did it very well. That's great.
Not sure about well, but
Yeah.
I did
Well,
it.
You did
you're
it.
part of a large group that was involved in an experiment, basically, of being thrown into the trenches of
Mm.
at-home parent life. And I mean, Josh, was that something for you too? I mean, like, did you? Because just it seems like maybe from your background and your job that would have been the same deal. Like you just kind of got pushed into it.
Yeah. So my daughter, who's 4.5 now, was born on April 8th, 2020. So it was like that was the first wave peak in our
Yeah.
area was April 8th.
Ooh.
And so that was a unique experience in and of itself. But yeah, it was the role that I had been in when my daughter was born was at a national mission organization. So there was a lot of travel, there was a lot of working out of the office, sometimes late nights. And yeah, that sudden pullback into just being home. Part of that was planned. Like I was going to be home for a little bit anyway, because we knew our daughter was going to be born.
Hmm.
But then that turned into a year and a half of being home instead of, a few weeks. And so, yeah, there were a lot of changes, a lot of reflection, and I ended up leaving that job in the midst of that decision making to be able to be home as my son was aging up to get to being able to go to school. And we are like, it'd be nice if I could walk them to school every day and walk them home every day and be there and be present. And yeah, I have that 6 hours in the middle of the day when they're actually healthy and going to school and it's
Hmm.
not a half day and all those other things that kind of throw off your schedule. But yeah, it was a very similar experience of kind of that reflection and coming back and trying to figure it out and making those intentional decisions to be present.
Awesome. So you got the pilot out, and I know this already because we've spoken previously, but you have other episodes that you, I believe,
Yeah.
have already filmed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really
So
excited. We have 4 new episodes coming out in June, and so we're going to have a 5 episode first season. The pilot will be combined with the 4 new ones, and 2 are done. One more should be done in a couple weeks, and our last one, another about 5 weeks from now, will be wrapped. Coming to PBS nationwide this June. We're really excited. So the
awesome.
next episode 2, is on screen time challenges, which I know, so outdated. Who has screen time challenges anymore? Really, like,
We just talked about parenting through a pandemic, right? There was a lot of screen time then.
oh yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
every boundary I had was out the window, in the
Yeah.
pandemic. You're like, especially for a 3-year-old, like, I don't, we can't leave. I don't know what to do with
Hmm.
this
Oh,
kid.
I told people, I said, any parent that is taking away screen time as a punishment for their kids is only punishing
Punching
themselves.
themselves.
Because
Hmm.
it's just not worth. I mean,
Absolutely.
and choose what they're watching, choose what they're spending time with. But I was at a point, and I love my children, I do. But my favorite child, which is every single one of them, thought I was their best friend. And every single one would spend all their time, Dad, we should do this. I'm like, okay, buddy. So watch a movie. I don't care. I need a moment, But understanding and that is an excellent subject. And actually, Brock had a guest host on last week because I was sick, and they talked about screen time a good bit. And like you said, it's a very relevant thing
Oh, it really is.
because I don't think any of us have solved it. I think all of us are still kind of in that metamorphosis of
No.
what can I do for my kids that benefits them the most, with screen time.
It's that it's finally swinging, the pendulum swinging back, though.
Hmm.
I think Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, really made a really massive influence on the whole country.
Hmm.
It really showing how dangerous this is and recognizing it as a health risk and how our psychological nature of all of our kids were changing. And what's difficult about screen time is because it really isn't, you can't have the same rules throughout their childhood. It's changing rapidly. And I mean, look, my kid goes to first grade, he gets a laptop, and
Yep.
it's like,
Hmm.
and there are parental controls on there, but YouTube is like still a wild west on that thing. And so we've had to really talk to him about that. But my son, it really, while social media, not a thing for an 8-year-old, at least not my 8-year-old, but it was video games for him.
Hmm.
How he would just not be able to handle the transition, not be able to handle the stop, and how, if he started doing poorly in the game, how he would just scream and yell and beat himself up. And it was just like, whoa, like he is a good kid. Like, yeah, he's got problems.
Hmm.
Every 8-year-old's got issues, but like this every 8-year-old's got issues,
That's
but
true.
he was there's this really tough moment in this episode, and I don't want to give it away, where we had the biggest fight of our relationship about screen time and video game use. And it really was devastating as a parent to have these conversations and you just feel helpless, and
Hmm.
so I'm thrilled that so many school districts across the country have started banning cell phone use during the day or put in significant restrictions. I think school districts felt they couldn't make any changes, they didn't have the support, and I think that book, along with reports by the Surgeon General and other experts, have really shown like, yeah, get them off of this stuff, wait
Hmm.
until late as possible to get them on social media.
Yep.
And then one of the people we end up interviewing in that episode too, a real family. I love that I actually went to college with them, but they have a 14-year-old and a 6-year-old. And the difference of the screen time usage, both now and what they had and how much it's changed in those 8 years, was so dramatic. And I loved hearing that because I think, was trying to really give perspective of like, this isn't just one issue. This is changing every year. And what the rules were for the oldest are not going to be the youngest. And that's typical for a lot of things, but there were real reasons as to why. This was like just the harm that's possible,
Yeah.
the addictiveness of the games, the changing of the algorithm, um, just the graphics. And it's also so hard because you need screens to be in school and be effective and
Hmm.
learn the proper skills. You can't just ban this. It's not like drugs. I know it's bad. Don't do drugs. It's like
Yes.
you have to have this, and finding that balance is so hard in
Hmm.
every family.
And I mean, my youngest even knew how to email her teacher at 6 when she had a question. Now her typing and her grammar were what you'd expect, kind of, but I think her teacher, took that, but also knew what
It
PowerPoint
probably was
was.
as good as teenagers though today, to be
It
honest,
is.
as a
Oh my
6-year-old,
word,
right?
yeah. My goodness. I'm like, my son, you are one of the smartest people I know. Stop. I need you to use the full word just to prove to me that you know how to spell, please. But the understanding that they knew how to do email, they knew how to use PowerPoint. I think my kid at the time didn't know as much as I knew about PowerPoint, but it was close because I was not that familiar either.
Yeah.
But using it as a tool, understanding that it does have benefits, and we're living in a digital world. I mean, I'm teaching my kids cursive, but they don't need it. They're not ever going to need to know how to write in cursive. It's just not,
They're excited about it
thing.
though. It is
Yeah.
new. Yeah,
Yes.
the first day my son wrote his name in cursive, I was blown away, and so was he. And
Awesome.
there was this Gen Z, I feel like it was a TikTok meme. This person was like, I didn't have to lift up a pencil and I wrote this sentence out. And it was like, You invented cursive? Like, what do you think just happened there?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So besides that, we talk about evolving masculinity, and
Hmm.
we talk about friendship and loneliness and mental health for men. And this last episode, which we just did a little bit of a pivot, but we think it's really timely. It's on digital citizenship and media literacy. Essentially, how do you help your kids not become little mean online trolls, more or less, is the
Mm.
subtext of that episode. Because it's one thing to talk about the screen time and what those boundaries and usage should be, but I want to have a better internet. I don't want him falling into traps with, what's coming down the pike. And also too, like I feel like we grew up with a different media and different internet. And now those messages can be really confusing. How do you evaluate what is going to be real, what is fake, when someone's trying to be biased, taking advantage of you, outright lying to you? And I think too, when you have major social media outlets like Meta, Instagram and Facebook aren't going to have fact checking anymore. It's like, as a journalist, that breaks me a little bit. It's
It
like fact
hurts.
checking's really wonderful thing. I love
Right.
factual facts, and
Yes.
to give up on that process is really tough. So how do you teach them what is real and what is fake?
Did the idea for that show come out of when you were working on screen time? Because I understand they're two separate subjects, but I can imagine talking about screen time, you get into, oh, my kid's a troll. This is what they've done. This is how they talk to their friends or whatever. Did you already have ideas to do both as their own separate, or
I,
was that?
Josh, you were nodding your head too on that one. You want to kind of take how we
No,
kind of evolved?
I
Yeah.
honestly can't remember what our original fifth episode was, but when we kind of started to read through our transcripts of the interviews of the screen time episode, we are just like, first they're like, does this need to be an hour long
Yeah.
documentary? Do we need to call our PBS representative and be like, we need an hour for this episode? Because there was no way we were going to be able to cut it
Yeah.
down to the 26 minutes. And then we just kind of started playing with it a little bit more, and then we realized there were really two distinct issues there. There
Mhm.
was, yeah, the screen time, and then the just good digital citizenship. And so, yeah, it just kind of
That's awesome.
evolved, and
No,
and that's been a benefit of this process is we've kind of been able to adapt as we
Mhm.
get out into the field and hear things and see things,
Yes.
or a new report comes out from the Surgeon General or whatever it is, and we're like, no, we
Yeah.
need to address this.
Mhm.
so when you were filming this, and of course the public is able to kind of see cameras around and different things like that, what kind of reactions were you getting? Like, were there negative reactions? What were some of the positive reactions? Like, what was going on during filming of these 4 episodes?
Everyone was just cursing at me. No, I'm kidding. It was really wonderful. I honestly, the reactions have always been really positive, and it's been grateful. And then even just some of the access for that we've been able to get for, I'm a new, host and director. I don't have a reputation that people know about. And for the Surgeon General to give us half a day and let us take over his office,
Hmm.
really supporting what we've done. In two of the episodes, we also talked to Richard Reeves, who of Boys and Men, of the book and the
Yes.
Institute. We got him to Philly. We flew him in, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do this for a day," and talk to him about a couple different things. We have for the media literacy. Actually, we're filming on Friday. He's a former congressman, and he was Secretary of the Army for a little bit. His name is Patrick Murphy, but he is a commentator on Fox now. But he used to have a show on MSNBC, and he's a more moderate centrist Democrat, and so he's already on TV a ton, and he's like, yeah, no, let's I'm going to invite you to our house for a half day, and let's talk and do stuff. And so
Wow.
there's a lot of people who are passionate about this and who feel like it's a really important issue to talk
Yeah,
about. And I'm sure
Love it.
you guys feel that on the ground too. And this has become such a bigger network than I'm sure you two both thought it could be. I mean, how have you experienced that kind of groundswell too of people who are like, oh yeah, this is more than just my hometown.
Hmm.
I was thinking about this too when you were talking. Philly's a big city, that kind of thing, and so there are a lot of probably progressive thoughts, and as far as dads go and that kind of thing. But outside of that, like, have you talked to dads who are in more like rural areas, or are kind of in that blue collar sector of things, like, and had conversations with them about where they feel fatherhood
It's a
is?
really good question. Like very much strive like it's meant to be a national perspective. This is not Philly. We are in West Coast. We are in the center of America. We were just in St. Louis, which was terrific. We brought people. We've done Iowa, Tennessee, and just it's meant to really showcase all of America and understand that like
That's awesome.
this is not partisan show whatsoever. I don't think good fatherhood is Democrat or Republican or independent or anything like that. I think good fatherhood is a set of values. I think it's really about making sure that you want to be there with your kid and how do you do this? How do you maximize your relationship and your time and also do it not just for the kids, which is obviously always important, but like for yourself because the message too I never got was how much joy I would get from being a dad, how much fulfillment I would receive. I'm not just doing this for some selfless, let's make sure our kids and the next generation is better. I love my life more when I'm with my family and when I feel like I'm being strong for them. And that message I still feel like is not shown. I still feel like the message is, oh no, you should be out, playing golf, today, and there's nothing wrong with golf, like go do it. But like that it would like people would rather be out playing golf than with their family all the time kind of thing. And
Hmm.
I'm like, that's fun. I love that. But man, I just also enjoy being at home. And I wish people would hear that more. I wish dads would tell their
Yeah.
kid, like, this is the best thing that's going to happen to you in your
Hmm.
life.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And I don't think I ever heard that either. It was never a message until I joined the National at Home Dad Network. I had never heard any dad tell me they love their job, or they love their being a dad, I should
Being a
say.
dad job.
It's a
Yeah.
job for me. But so
Yeah.
and it's really just so amazing that this message is growing, that there are more dads. And we have a lot of dads that work from home in our organization. We're not totally all at home dads full time,
Yeah.
but it really getting past that to where I meet dads out in my local area. And do live now in a very rural area. I have a lot of very, very blue collar farmers, that type
Yeah.
of mentality about
Mhm.
being a man.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
amazing now that it's not often, but about 10% of the people that I've met in this little tiny small town have said, man, that sounds like a lot of work, but I'd love to do that. I wish I could spend more time with my kids. And it almost brings a tear to my eye so that you can finally admit, I guess, that it's okay to love your kids. Growing up, that was always
Love that.
something you
I
make
love
fun of
that.
people. Oh, you love your mom? What? Yeah, of course I love my mom.
My
You don't love
mom.
your mom? What?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
wrong?
yeah, what's
What
wrong?
happened at
Should
home,
we sit
right?
down and talk about that? Like, I'm so
Exactly. Yeah.
sorry.
And with kids too. Now, granted, I think all of us can admit kids can be jerks.
Mm,
I
mhm.
love my wife like a fat kid loves cake. She is my moon and stars, seriously. But she's also a pain in the ass. She just is. And that's just something that we understand. So we love our kids and they can have those times when they're just absolute buttheads.
Mm.
But again, the joy that you get out of being
Yeah.
there for them, and providing for them, yes,
Oh,
but not just financially, providing for their mental health, providing for their emotional self-awareness and well-being. Those are absolutely things that I think, as a dad, should take the lead in. You're expected to lead your family. For most families, that's how it is. And yeah, part of it is teaching them how to be emotional, how to be vulnerable and not be weak, and I love that it's
Yeah.
it's almost exploding at this point in the world, at least that I'm experiencing
Yeah.
so many dads that are getting that message.
That's one of the things with also too, like when traveling to Home Dad Con, if you're flying in or whatever, and especially like most of us always are wearing some sort of dad centric shirt, if not one that just says Home Dad Con, which also just sparks like an interest because people are like, what is that? And then you're on a plane sitting beside somebody and they just strike up a conversation. And I always find it interesting that you get people who they're like, oh, a dad conference. Why?
oh,
What's the
why?
deal with that? And I'm like, okay, well,
Whew.
you're you're a mom, you're a mom, right? Like so you've been brought up for the most part, most women who are moms have been brought up on the fact that, here's a baby doll. Here's how
Mhm.
playing house, like all the different things. So like you are pretty much groomed into it. And for dads, growing up as a boy and a young man, like you're kind of just left to, all right, you can either go full Lord of the Ring or Lord of the Flies type style, or you can, whatever it is, like just these different things where it's like you're just kind of, if you want to learn it, great. If you don't, like, all right, no big deal. And the thing about Home Dad Con, I always tell everybody is like it's a professional fatherhood, like career
Right.
growing like weekend with amazing things. And I've gotten to the point where even though it is, very at home dad centric, I have mentioned to multiple dads, especially here in Cincinnati at like meetups and things like that. I'm like, this conference, it's for dads who either are super active and enjoy fatherhood and want to just lean into that and learn more, or maybe they're like trying to figure it out and they just need to be around other dads and just see and have conversations with these dads. And it kind of came full tilt to me recently because actually one of the dads in our Cincinnati group who's not an at-home dad, he actually just was so just impressed with me talking about St. Louis when we were there that he ended up signing up and he's coming to San Antonio. And I'm super pumped for him because he's a dad of one and he's just trying to figure it out. I mean, he's just like this first generation, super involved dad and he's
Yeah,
trying to figure
that's
out the
awesome.
balance of it all. And I think like what you talk about in the pilot episode
Thank
fits
you.
so
Hmm.
well with his
Absolutely.
with his whole
Uh,
persona on being a dad. And there's so many other dads out there that are in
my
that
like
exact
I'm not
same
ashamed to
boat.
say my role model is still a cartoon dog from Australia. It's like my role model of fatherhood. And I would have the opportunity, when we were in Australia, I had breakfast with Joe Brum, and the creator is just like, I just wanted to say thank you, for so much that helped me get through it. And
Hmm.
also didn't hurt that Bluey really came out during the pandemic, here.
It was good
Like
timing.
we
It was
all
good
Perfect timing,
timing.
like
right?
so perfect timing. I was so happy that that happened. But I look at the fatherhood and parenting, and I think we just need to acknowledge that we all need some professional development. And I don't just mean dads too. I think I think a lot of moms do as well. And while I feel like some are groomed maybe that way, I think it's more that there's just a lot of expectations that they'll naturally be good because they're
Right.
moms. And I think it's kind of false to be like, oh, you're a mom, you obviously know how to do this perfectly. I think that's where we get into issues of like, we go shopping with the kids and we should get like gold medals kind of thing. And when
Right.
moms do it,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't handle your three kids right now while you're shopping in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And we all I think we just need to look at parenting as it is evolving all the time. And I don't necessarily mean like we need to change the way we always parent. I'm not saying every generation is better either. I think the issues that every generation faces are different. I think the technological issue here is going to be our big thing because the internet we all grew up with is not the internet that they have today. It is really
Hmm.
different. I think that's really the key of arch of the last episode that we're working on. It's like it is a very different thing, and we have to stay on top of
Yeah.
Instagram and Snapchat and everything and TikTok. As much as I hate TikTok, but like it's just we have to understand this because if we don't know it, that's where our kids are going to hang out because we're not
Hmm.
young teenagers.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
this is just about those changing issues and even understanding the work-life balancing. Like, look, we're, two generations ago, it was, one house, one income took care of the middle class lifestyle. That is not the same today. And women today are often, well, many are working full-time jobs too, and yet they have the same amount of housework to do. And that's how difficult is that, for them. And so as dads, how do we be better partners by recognizing our abilities and also not that we can do dishes and or we can do
Hmm.
laundry. This is not something we're incapable of. And by doing that, actually, are we stronger? Are we being better for ourselves too? And can still go out and golf. Like we can do all these things. We
Hmm.
really can. So I love being able to like look at your conferences, look at these opportunities as ways to like get new ideas because we all get stuck. We all are like we get into routines and those are good, but maybe we could try something different. And how does that help us make our lives easier and make it better for our kids?
Yeah. You mentioned in the pilot episode the what would Bandit do? It really hit me hard. I don't know if it's just the fact that I was, a 90s kid growing up in the church and the
Yeah, it
WWJD
is. Yep.
bracelets were a really big thing for
Hmm.
me. But I think that I believe there are more times than not that a WWBD bracelet would be a great thing to have on my wrist because there are lots of times where like my kids want to do things or they're asking me to do things and I'm just like the easy answer is no, I'm tired. I don't want to do it. But on the opposite side of it is like, what would Bandit do in that situation? And just really leaning into, being a part of what your kids are doing and stuff. And so I just truly think that this whole thing that is being produced and being put out there for consumption is super exciting.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
we've had connections with another type of fatherhood show as well that's on a YouTube series, and they've come to the convention and done some different things. And I was also just kind of wondering from that, like, you've got these episodes that are coming out in June, and then are you looking for other dads to like kind of span
Oh yeah.
out? Like, is that part of what coming to, because you're coming to Home Dad Con, is that correct?
Josh, man, I think
Maybe?
we're making plans. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
We
I
are
I've been saying
absolutely.
I want to go, so
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
commit to it.
absolutely.
Let's go.
We gotta go. We gotta go.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you're gonna have a captive audience of 100 some at-home dads. I'm a work from home dad,
Nice.
who was a full-time at-home dad, but once my kids got into full-time school, I was able to
Back in the
find a
workforce.
very
Yeah.
flexible
Excellent.
job and get back into the workforce. But and there are other dads like that as well. But like, is that kind of the idea that it seems like this is not a one
Now,
and
the
done type?
beauty, the beauty of this is that it's topical and relevant every year, and we're able to kind of also shift. What's really relevant right now? I mean, I think we had three or four other ideas we wanted to do in season one, and just other things came to the forefront, both personally or in society and culture. So actually, screen time challenges was not the second episode I was going to do, but when my son started having these issues. I'm like, this is personal. I need to actually figure this out now. I can't wait another, year and a half to do this. So that's why that episode got pushed to the forefront, and then it turned into, oh, everybody is really experiencing this. Everyone is
Hmm.
having difficulty figuring out that boundary and that line because it keeps shifting with every age and with the new technology. We have ideas for a ton of episodes we want to do. Additionally, we want to travel again too. We've had thoughts about Sweden and Denmark because those are typically the two countries around the world always named the best countries to raise kids. And we want to know
Hmm.
why and if there's anything we can bring back home, but we've also looked at Japan and South Korea because their birth rates are so low and they are incentivizing families to have kids by giving them tens of thousands of dollars and giving them time off. And it's still not really moving the needle. And we're worried that, is the United States not far behind this? And what does it mean when a generation of people say, like, it's too expensive and too hard to raise kids? And it's like, what do we need to do as a society to recognize the beauty and the wonder and the joy that comes with having kids and the importance for a culture?
Well, I think there's also a fear tactic to consider as well, in that that's the other big thing is this fear tactic of, am I going to lose my job if I take
Oh,
paternity leave for more than
absolutely.
2 days kind of deal. And I've talked to multiple dads about that, and it's super frustrating. And I would put that probably in that basket with like the Asian
Yeah,
culture, and just the fact of like you can have one boy and one girl, and that's it. And then like the fear of having any more, what the government would do back then, and now they're like, oh hey, like that didn't work, now
they
we're trying
are.
to fix it. And it's like, you've already instilled this massive fear tactic into this people group, and they're just like not trusting what you're saying. So yeah, they're going to struggle with that. And the same can be said for the United States in the fashion of, yes, there have been laws put in place that help out with paternity leave, but then you have, these unfortunately, just going to use the word grotesque bosses who are not willing to see the importance of taking 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks off as a new dad to take care of your spouse or the mother of your child and the kid. And it's basically the same thing. So yeah, I can completely
Yeah,
understand where you're coming from with just that fear or just that anxiety even of what
yeah,
could be.
100%. Yeah, and there's still a lot of workplace stigma or an assumption, or as we talked about, it's like in the pilot too. It's like dads are just kind of lying about like, oh yeah, I'm working till 5, but they're out at 4 because they got to get their kids to soccer practice, and then they're putting in the hours at night, which is also not healthy too. It's like, how do we figure this out? Because we're just fooling ourselves into like what is supposed to be healthy and acceptable and appropriate. And speaking of
Yeah.
sports, I've got a kid who is athletic, and we swore before he was born, like we were like, we are not doing the travel sports thing. Okay, we're not. And then here we are, and he's on 2 travel teams, and we're like, this is insane. And there is more money spent on youth sports than in all of the NFL
Wow.
nationwide. And it's like, how do we it's crazy, and it's essentially that idea of like we're trying to keep up with the neighbors, the Joneses, and make sure everyone's got the latest and greatest. And it's like this is not healthy either. Where is there good levels of, because look, not every kid's going to be a D1 athlete, right? Like how do you
Hmm.
have them have fun, not break the bank, and make them learn certain things that are good. We've talked about, and sorry if I said anger or not, but like anger is something I think a lot of men deal with, I deal with.
Hmm. Absolutely.
We need to have a conversation about where that's serving us and where it's not. I think
Hmm.
that's what someone is, really trying to be a grown-up dad is going to be able to ask these tougher conversations and be like, how do I want to be better tomorrow? And that's what
Yeah.
we kind of use as our
Yes.
target for like, it's giving parents, as Josh always reminds me, it's giving the language to have these conversations because I'm not a perfect dad by any means. I am not going up on the pedestal on the podium, all right? But I hope to ask the right questions to help all of us get a little bit better.
Fantastic.
I think it's the dads who are willing to say I'm not the best and don't try to bring that facade into kind of
Yeah.
presenting things that is going to be what actually produces the most fruit from your parenthood. So I love that you said that, definitely. Well, hey, we're kind of at time, unfortunately.
Just scratch the surface, guys. Are you kidding me? Come on, there's
Right.
so much
I
more.
know. Well, hey, it's like your pilot episode, it's scratching the surface of
Thank
what
you.
will be coming. And I think that, a lot of the listeners are definitely, from what we know of them, will probably going to check out
I
the
love that.
pilot
Hmm.
and hopefully we get to see you both
Yeah.
in San Antonio. And I will say the guys over there, they love to tell stories, so I'm sure you could probably
That's what I want. It's absolutely what I
fill
want.
fill plenty of books and yeah, so lots of stories
No,
to
we
be
we
had for
need
that for
sources
sure.
for season 2. So please bring the stories. I'm not kidding. Like come up and tell me where you're
Yeah.
from and be like, hey, you should do an episode on this and here's why. Like I love that.
Okay.
I
I'm just
love
going to tell you, you pulled my string. Okay. So when I'm talking to you for an hour and a half,
that.
you started it. Just
In other
you
words,
pulled my
Danny's saying
string.
challenge
Whoop, there he
accepted.
goes.
Okay.
Chatty
And bring me a
Cathy.
beer while we're talking about the next
Sure.
stuff. I think that's a little
Oh, that's
easier.
an
That's
easy
a little
thing to
There's
easier.
a
do.
lot of
Well,
very craft
sidebar
beer,
to the
very good
conversation.
beer. Yeah. And there's a
Well,
lot of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have our own beer share event actually, and guys bring beers from all over the
It's
country,
crazy.
and we have a whole thing with it. So yeah, if you're into beer, we
Yeah.
got you on that,
perfect.
definitely. So, well, hey, fellas,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on the show. I really am excited for the new episodes that'll be coming out in June, and so we'll make sure to get
Yeah.
those put up. I'll get some links put up for where folks can find you. Definitely your website, growingup.dad. We'll get that put up as well. But again, thank you for coming and giving us time to talk with you, and we really look forward to everything that you guys are endeavoring
Uh,
for the
I
future.
always
So
enjoy this. I'm so glad we were able to do this, guys. Thank you so much. And yes, good luck with the conference, and we're going to see you there.
awesome. Well, hey, that's all we got for today. Hope you all have a great rest of your week.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.